Hello and welcome to the Midweek Conversation of First Baptist Sweetwater, where we strive to be the first responders of God's love. Also, Teek and I have the opportunity to break down Sunday's message and events for the week.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought I'd try
That's
something
a new
different.
twist.
Yeah, a little bit different. Anyways.
Okay. It works.
So, and it's sort of a reminder that today's not Monday.
Right, no, it's not. Today is Tuesday.
I'm way off
For us.
on my schedule, my rhythm. Anyways.
Yeah, those Monday holidays, they do it every time.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like a holiday last night.
No, because we were back to normal routine.
At the softball field.
Yep.
I was curious how this would work out with the students, and then softball team game.
It worked out pretty well. I had a lot of people asking who won, the adults or the kids. Well, if you ask the kids say they won. If you ask the adults, they say they won. So I guess everybody won.
we are all winners.
it's that everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the mentality we're in these days. No, everyone had fun, and it was funny. It's always fun to watch when like an adult gets up there and hits a line drive and a kid catches it.
Yeah.
You're excited for that kid, and they're excited because they got an adult out. And adults can laugh it off, be like, those things happen.
Well, y'all played with a smaller, heavy ball.
It was a fabric ball for when the adults were batting. That way it wouldn't hurt anybody, but you could still hit it. And then when the kids were batting, they got to use a regular ball.
Yeah. And you could tell there were some kids that were ball players.
Yes, there were. First batter, Tapley gets up there and just crunches it.
Yeah, so that was fun. Getting to see them enjoy the night and be a part of it, so that was good.
And everybody got to hit, everybody had fun, and had someone afterwards tell me, said, y'all do it right. Like, this is what you should do. And I was like, thanks.
Well, maybe we should explore that, not on a podcast necessarily, but definitely in our conversation, because it still is an intriguing, our whole softball culture is an intriguing part of our culture here at First Baptist Sweetwater.
It is developed that way, yeah.
And
lots of numbers.
Because we're talking about how this semester we've talked about how we reach adults, and because it's more natural with students and children because they're around or in the school year, tons of kids.
Right.
Whereas adults are just it's the same in their work world. But it's just crazy how it's worked out, and you can think back on kids that we've gotten to know that started with us because of softball.
Right. Yeah.
So, anyways, a lot of wins on the softball field for First Baptist Sweetwater.
Right. At least 3. I mean, we won our softball game, and then the adults won and the kids won. So 3 wins in one night over 2 games.
Yeah, it's hard to be better than that.
So we we always text after the game's over back and forth, and I was texting with Eli and Rylan, and I said, hey, Rylan, has your home run landed yet? And Eli said, yeah, it did, because he heard it hit the ag barn behind. He thought he might have heard a pig squeal. Which the ag barn is so far away, but I mean, he just crunched that ball. It was amazing.
I didn't know that. I saw that response on Facebook. I wasn't sure what Eli meant by that.
Oh, yeah, it was huge. He crushed that ball, and it was just funny, because the school ag barn is probably another quarter to half mile behind the ball field, but when he hit that, we were like, that's never coming down.
Yeah. Well, it's you got our week kicked off well. We have our first night of youth and children on this Wednesday night, so we get into our theme development, and we're talking about the different
signs of the Messiah and John.
Yeah, so that'll be good.
Yeah, we got a really cool, I don't want to say decoration because it's intentional, but it's not an icon, so I don't know what you would say, but it's something to help the students visualize this idea of signs.
Yeah.
But it's not just road signs.
Yeah, well, good. I think it's going to be a good semester. I know you spent a lot of time narrowing it down, getting the lessons down that you wanted to, so it'll be good.
It was a little difficult, but it worked out.
Yeah. Well, we finished up a series on Sunday in Timothy. That was a good one. It's different coming off of the Gospel of Luke that I did. Gospel preaching is a lot easier, I think. More of a narrative kind of approach you can take to it than in 1 Timothy, which is more like a Bible study, it felt like. And so, but it was really good, I think, to, we're into a series next that's not going to be from one book in particular. And I've started kind of grieving that because I've enjoyed for weeks now being, in a particular book of the Bible,
Right.
and even if it's in the letters, it's still kind of fun to pick up a deeper understanding, a broader understanding, maybe.
Well, it's
Yeah.
never too late.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Well, no, I don't
Yeah,
think
it is.
so.
Yes, it
anyways.
is.
But yeah. Anyway, so but one of the things I was thinking about yesterday, I didn't do this part very well, I felt like, and I was wondering about it later, that Paul makes the reference to our spiritual life in terms of our physical life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that. I mean, the thing about the Bible is if it's done more than once, you feel like it's done a lot.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't do that a lot, but he does it. He's used it before.
Right.
This deal of somehow looking at our faith life in regard to running a race or being prepared physically, that kind of thing. But one of the things that post-sermon that dawned on me was that, and I'm at this place where physically, when you've laid off and not exercised, or you've changed your routine and you're not doing something, you haven't been taking care of yourself in a certain area. And that's, so at some point, whether it's when you get back into the exercise or the nutrition part of it, you start to recognize it, or you realize it while you're in it, that you've neglected something because it shows up somehow.
Right.
I think when he draws a comparison to our spiritual life, we can go a long time without realizing that something's been neglected.
Right. Because you've got to get back into it before you realize it's been neglected.
Yeah.
Which is why we've been talking about with the pandemic, how you've got people on the fringes who have not come back to church because they were off for so long, they don't realize it's been neglected.
Yeah. That you don't realize it's been missing. And so I think the habits that we have, that we would want to have to help us to grow and develop our faith, transition sometimes, like the COVID year, pandemic year, or other things, even moving to a different house. I've used that before. Can throw those rhythms off where your habits kind of change. And it's really important to stick with those. And I think the other thing, having been a part of faith for as long as I have, that's another way of not admitting that I'm an old man.
I didn't say anything.
But is that some of those patterns start to shift, like this whole journaling thing. I had not done that most of my life. It started in sincerity since I've been at Sweetwater. I think I might have started it right before I came, but it wasn't long. But then I think the other part that I've noticed is the part in our faith of just being more reflective and kind of withdrawing, I guess. Anyways, I don't know if that's growing older in faith, some of the things that I'm starting to see that I enjoy or I'm drawn to, or if it's some of the things that I'm reading that have an influence on my life. I don't know.
Yeah. You were talking about how that ties in with, like, you don't notice it until it's missing or until you start back with, like, bicycling. Like, you take off a week or 2 weeks of that and all of a sudden you got to get your legs back.
Yeah.
And I think that ties in perfectly, just that mentality. Like I'm saying like a lot. That's weird. So Paul understood how that relates, and everyone can relate to those moments where you start back doing something, you're like, this is ridiculous. I get out there on the softball field and I'm like, I haven't done this in forever. I'm still saying like a lot. I'm done. It's a lot of like. You get back out on the softball field and I just think about how painful it is the next morning, and it's because I haven't done it for a whole year. Well, that's how it is when you get back in Scripture. You're like, I really love this. I don't know why I stopped.
Right.
Or journaling or whatever. But sometimes life happens and that gets frustrating, and we let those things slip.
I think it is hard to add routines, whereas I think in the physical part of our world, you're getting ready for something in particular, like a softball season or a long summer or whatever. You have a longer period where you can adjust and invest in that. I think in terms of the spiritual disciplines, it's much harder to find that because of just the pattern and the number of things that you're going to do to help that would bring some kind of benefit to that experience. But anyways, I think there's a lot of things to think through there. Paul was very instructive to Timothy, and I still feel like we ought to always be encouraging one another to help to find people that we can encourage, and then also gravitate towards people that will be an encouragement to you, the things that they're doing.
I wish we had a letter of Timothy to Paul.
Well, that would be interesting.
Just to see what he would say as far as, thank you for this encouragement. This is what I see developing because of you saying this. And maybe even hearing what he says to Paul.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it would be. I've never looked at it in that way, but that's a good way to think through maybe even how you might want to study that book if you go back through that. Yeah, so there's a lot of good parts in there that deal with church leadership and along that kind of stuff. I think the thing to remember there is that it's not necessarily teaching a church structure, but just how that different functions that ought to be in the church, and also how those functions should be held accountable. I think is kind of where that's going. That's where I go by. You have to look at the heart of the rule and not the rule,
right?
Because there are going to be contradictions elsewhere.
One of my favorite things Dr. Lyle ever said was, if you try to pattern your church after the New Testament church, you're going to have a problem, because you got the Philippian church, you got the Corinthian church, you got the Church of Ephesus. There's no one way to be the church. And we all have issues, but we all have those moments where God looks down and just says, great job.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming more and more of a challenge because churches are having to do that. Whereas in an earlier era, again, I get into age things here, but it's the denomination dictated. In our denomination, they didn't necessarily dictate that, but because it was set up as a structure, it was easy to follow along with that. And now we don't do a large number of those things as far as routines and patterns and programs. It was interesting at that children's meeting the other day, talking about the evolution of children's ministry from programs that you and I grew up with, which are not the same. I'm older than Teague.
Well, no, I mean,
but a lot of those programs, a lot of those programs were older.
Stuck.
Yeah, stuck for a real long time. And they're only recently beginning to kind of subside as far as emphasis. But anyways, this coming Sunday, Nathan Adams, a different Nathan Adams
than the one we've had
before, is going to be coming in from Florida, Texas. And he will be doing the message on Sunday. I'm excited about that. He's a young pastor-to-be, I think is the best way to say this for him. He's a student minister right now. He's graduated from seminary, from Truett Seminary, and he's working on his D-Min and all but writing his paper. You know how that feels.
So much fun.
Yeah, so looking forward to our church getting to meet him Sunday and encourage him. I do enjoy bringing in these young ministers and speakers because I know that our church is an encouragement to them, and it's a good experience for them as well. So anyway, looking forward to that. And then when I return on the next weekend, whatever number that is, September whatever, we'll be talking about giftedness. So it's not so much gifts, because we tend to think of spiritual gifts, but it's just a broader way of looking at giftedness and the way that the church is gifted, the way that individuals are gifted. And so I'm looking forward to that, to kind of breaking that down. That's been in the incubator since sabbatical. Good. And so I'm excited to jump into those things. So,
and we had some big news drop in our email last week or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
And I mentioned the name just now.
Right. Summit Series.
Yeah, Summit Series in January. We started that this year.
Right. We started this past year, and so all of our leadership gave us a thumbs up to go ahead on that for next year. And so we're excited that in January of 2023 that Dr. Ken Lyle will be coming and leading us for 3 weeks.
One of my all-time favorites. Love that guy.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't know if he would still do stuff like this, so I'm really excited.
I'm glad he did.
So it could mean that he will be the last church that he does something like this for.
Oh, that would be cool, because the world needs his voice.
I agree.
The church needs his voice.
So we're looking forward to that. You were his GA, correct?
Yes. And funny story, since he never watches this, I'm sure he won't be able to say anything about it. I came from a different line of learning how to pronounce Greek, totally different, 2 ways of pronouncing it. And Dr. Gramley taught us one way, and when I get there to be Dr. Lyle's GA, he speaks it a different, uses the other pronunciation. And I walk in and I just hear this voice coming out of his office. First, I haven't even met the guy yet. and I hear him say, "Yeah, my GA speaks that way too," and he just knew I was. And I was like, "Great way to meet." I was like, "He's gonna hate me from the get-go." I walked in, great mentor and great guy, but that was my first time I walked in. I was like, "Hey, I'm Teague. I can speak any way you want me to."
Well, it'll be fun to be able to interact with him for 3 weeks in January.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll start off with our chili lunch, so we'll be sharing more about that as we get
Yes.
closer to that.
Sounds good.
It is good. Well, hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you this Sunday at 10:30.
See you then.